crisp autumn air carried the scent of wood smoke and fallen leaves as Sarah walked toward Elmwood Community Park. Today was the annual Autumn Fair, a beloved local tradition, but for Sarah it held a different kind of significance. Tucked between booths selling homemade jams and knitted scarves was a small tent representing the Abernathy Foundation, a charitable organization renowned in the region. Sarah had an interview there at 11:09 a.m. sharp, a chance perhaps to finally land a stable job with a decent salary and benefits. Life hadn't been easy since her parents passed away. At 28, Sarah found herself the primary caregiver for her younger sister Amy, who was only 16 and navigating the complexities of high school and growing up without their parents. Sarah worked a patchwork of part-time jobs, waitressing, tutoring, anything to keep their small house afloat and ensure Amy had everything she needed, especially towards her dream of college. This position at the Abernathy Foundation, an administrative role that required organization and calm under pressure, felt like a lifeline. She had polished her one good blazer, rehearsed her answers, and arrived at the park with a knot of nervous hope fluttering in her chest. The fair was already bustling, laughter mixed with the cheerful sounds of a folk band playing on a small stage. Children chased each other, faces sticky with cotton candy. Sarah navigated the crowd, her eyes scanning for the Abernathy Foundation tent. She checked her watch. 10:45 a.m. Plenty of time. As she rounded a corner near the main lawn, she saw a small commotion. A knot of people had gathered, murmuring anxiously. In the center, an older gentleman lay on the ground near a display of pumpkins, his face pale and contorted in pain. He seemed to have tripped and fallen, his leg twisted at an awkward angle beneath him. Panic rippled through the onlookers. "Someone call an ambulance," a woman cried. "Don't move him," another shouted. "Is he all right?" a young man asked, hovering uncertainly. Sarah's heart leaped into her throat. She had trained as an EMT years ago, before a back injury made the physical demands of the job too much. But the instincts were still there, sharp and immediate. While others stood back, unsure what to do, Sarah pushed gently through the crowd, her mind already assessing the situation. The man was conscious but clearly in agony. His breathing was shallow. His leg looked badly injured, possibly broken. Moving him incorrectly could cause further damage, perhaps even more serious internal injury if he'd hit his head hard. Time seemed to slow down. Her interview was in 15 minutes. This was her one shot at the job she desperately needed. Every practical cell in her body screamed at her to check he was okay, ensure someone else was calling for help, and then continue towards the Abernathy tent. But looking at the man's eyes, wide with pain and fear, she knew she couldn't. Her training wasn't just about physical skills, it was about a commitment to helping when others needed it most. The principles of do no harm and providing aid until professional help arrived were ingrained in her soul. "Everyone, please give him some air," Sarah said calmly, her voice cutting through the anxious murmurs. She knelt beside the man, speaking softly. "Sir, can you hear me? My name is Sarah. I have some medical training. Please don't try to move." He groaned, nodding slightly, his eyes fixated on her, a flicker of trust replacing some of the fear. "Okay, sir. I need to check a few things," she said, her hands moving gently but purposefully. She checked his pulse, his breathing, looked for signs of head injury without moving him. She carefully examined his leg, confirming her fear. It was almost certainly broken, and moving him would be incredibly risky. "Someone called 911?" Sarah asked, looking up at the faces around her. "Yes, just did," a woman confirmed. "Good, thank you," Sarah replied, her focus returning to the injured man. She unbuttoned her blazer and rolled it up, placing it carefully under his head for support. "Just try to stay still, sir. The ambulance is coming. We'll stay right here with you." Minutes stretched into what felt like an eternity. The fair music seemed distant, the laughter muted. Sarah stayed by the man's side, monitoring his condition, speaking to him in a low, soothing voice, trying to keep him calm. She asked his name. He mumbled, "Richard Abernathy." Richard Abernathy. The name sounded familiar, but in her focused state, she couldn't place it. "Mr. Abernathy, just focus on your breathing," she instructed gently. "You're doing great. Help is on the way." A few people stayed nearby, offering quiet support, but most drifted away, drawn back to the festivities. A woman, noticing Sarah's blazer on the ground and her interview-appropriate skirt and blouse, leaned down and whispered, "Aren't you supposed to be somewhere? You're going to miss it." Sarah heard her, the words a sharp reminder of the opportunity slipping away. She glanced at her watch again. 11:10 a.m. The interview was definitely missed. A wave of despair washed over her, cold and heavy. All that preparation, all that hope, gone. But looking back at Mr. Abernathy's pained face, her resolve hardened. She couldn't leave him. Not like this. The job felt insignificant compared to a human life, a human being in distress right before her eyes. Finally, the wail of sirens grew louder, closer. Paramedics arrived, their movements efficient and professional. Sarah quickly and clearly briefed them on what happened, what she observed, and the steps she had taken. "Excellent work," the lead paramedic said, giving her a nod of approval as they carefully stabilized Mr. Abernathy and prepared him for transport. "Your quick thinking and proper care likely prevented further injury. You clearly know what you're doing." Sarah offered a tired smile, relief flooding her as she watched them lift Mr. Abernathy onto a stretcher and wheel him towards the waiting ambulance. As they pulled away, the fair sounds rushed back in, loud and jarring. Sarah stood up, brushing dirt and leaves from her skirt, feeling emotionally drained and utterly disheartened. It was past noon. She had missed her interview, not by a few minutes, but by a significant amount of time. She walked towards the Abernathy Foundation tent, the vibrant atmosphere of the fair now feeling strangely muted and indifferent. At the tent, she found a woman meticulously arranging brochures. She had a crisp, no-nonsense demeanor. This must be Mrs. Gable, the administrative manager Sarah was supposed to meet. "Excuse me," Sarah said, her voice hesitant. "I'm Sarah Miller. I had an interview scheduled for 11 p.m." Mrs. Gable looked up, her expression cool and unimpressed. She glanced at her watch. "Ms. Miller, it's 12:15. Your interview was over an hour ago." "I know," Sarah said, trying to explain. "There was an accident near the lawn. An elderly gentleman fell, and I had to help. He was injured, and I stayed with him until the paramedics came. I have EMT training." Mrs. Gable's expression remained unchanged, bordering on skeptical. "An accident. I see. Well, Miss Miller, while we appreciate community spirit, punctuality is crucial for this role, especially on the day of your interview. We had a tight schedule, and frankly, your absence was disruptive. The position requires reliability and the ability to prioritize." "But he was hurt," Sarah protested gently. "He needed help. It was a medical emergency." "Medical professionals are equipped to handle such situations," Mrs. Gable stated, her voice sharp. "Your priority should have been your scheduled commitment. We have already proceeded with other candidates. I'm afraid the opportunity has passed." Sarah's shoulders slumped. The finality in Mrs. Gable's tone was unmistakable. There was no room for understanding, no allowance for the circumstances. It felt like a slap in the face, a cold dismissal of her values and her actions. I I understand," Sarah murmured, her voice barely a whisper. She felt a hot sting behind her eyes. Swallowing hard, she turned and walked away from the tent, from the fair, from the job that had represented so much hope. The bus ride home felt long and silent. The weight of her disappointment pressed down on her. She pictured Amy's face, her bright smile, her dreams. How was she going to keep things going? When she got home, Amy was studying at the kitchen table, classical music playing softly from a small speaker. "Hey, Sarah, how'd it go? Did you get it?" Amy asked, looking up eagerly. Sarah managed a weak smile. "Hey, Ames, can you take a break for a minute?" Amy saw the look on her face, and her smile faded. "What happened?" Sarah sat down and told her the story, the rescue, missing the interview, Mrs. Gable's cold response. As she spoke, the dam of her composure broke, and tears streamed down her face. I missed it, Ames. The job, it's gone. Because I stopped to help someone." Amy came over and hugged her tightly. "Oh, Sarah, that's awful. But, but you saved that man, right? You did the right thing. That's what Mom and Dad always taught us." "I know, Ames," Sarah sobbed into her sister's shoulder. I know I did the right thing, but it feels so unfair. We needed that job so much. I know, Amy whispered, stroking her hair. It is unfair, but you're the best person I know, Sarah. You have the biggest heart. Something good will happen for you. I know it will. They sat together for a long time, finding comfort in each other's presence. The house felt small, their worries large, but their bond was a source of quiet strength. Despite the crushing disappointment, Sarah held on to the flicker of conviction that she hadn't compromised her values. She had lost a potential job, but she hadn't lost herself. The next few days were difficult. Sarah spent hours applying for other jobs, facing the daunting reality of the competitive market. The hope from the fair had been extinguished, replaced by the familiar gnawing anxiety about bills and the future. Then on Thursday morning, as Sarah was helping Amy get ready for school, the old rotary phone in the hallway rang. It rarely rang unless it was a telemarketer or a bill collector. Sarah hesitated, then sighed and went to answer it. Hello, she said, her voice a little weary. Hello, is this Sarah Miller? A warm, kindly voice, distinctly older, was on the other end. Yes, this is Sarah, she replied, her brow furrowed in confusion. She didn't recognize the voice. Sarah, my name is Richard Abernathy. Sarah's heart skipped a beat. Mr. Abernathy, the man from the fair. Oh, Mr. Abernathy, it's so good to hear from you. Are you all right? How are you feeling? Much better, thanks to you, my dear, he said, his voice filled with genuine warmth. A broken hip, a fractured wrist, and a few bruises. But the doctors said it could have been much worse if I hadn't been stabilized so expertly right after the fall. They specifically mentioned a young woman with quick hands and a calm demeanor. A blush spread across Sarah's cheeks. I was just glad I could help. Help? Sarah, you were a guardian angel, he said with deep sincerity. You didn't just help. You prevented significant further injury and managed a chaotic situation with grace under pressure. My son, David, who was at the fair with me, told me what happened. He said you stayed with me the entire time. Yes, sir. I just wanted to make sure you were okay until the paramedics arrived. And I also heard, Sarah, Mr. Abernathy continued, his tone shifting slightly, that you were at the fair for an interview with my foundation. Sarah's stomach clenched. Here it comes, she thought. He'll thank me, maybe offer to repay me the bus fare, and that will be the end of it. Yes, sir, I was, for an administrative position. And I understand, he said, his voice now carrying a note of controlled disapproval that wasn't directed at her, that you missed that interview because you were helping me, and that consequently the opportunity was withdrawn. Sarah hesitated. Well, yes, sir. That's what happened. Sarah, Mr. Abernathy said, his voice firm but kind, the Abernathy Foundation seeks to support those who make a real difference in our community. We look for compassion, integrity, courage, and the ability to act decisively when needed. Skills listed on a resume are important, of course, but character, my dear, character is paramount. Sarah listened, a fragile hope beginning to blossom in her chest. The administrative position you applied for was important, Mr. Abernathy continued, but it was merely one small part of what we do. The young woman who chose to miss a crucial job interview to tend to an injured stranger on the ground, who calmly used her skills to provide aid when others stood by. That is the kind of person I want working within my organization. That is the embodiment of the values we stand for. He paused and Sarah held her breath. Sarah, he said, his voice warm and inviting, I would like to offer you a position, not the administrative role you applied for, but a newly created position as my executive assistant. It would involve working directly with me on foundation initiatives, coordinating projects, meeting with partners, and ensuring our operations run smoothly. It requires discretion, organizational skill, but most importantly, a good heart and sound judgment. Qualities you have demonstrated you possess in abundance. Sarah gasped softly, clutching the phone tighter. Executive assistant? Working directly with Mr. Abernathy? It sounded like something out of a dream. The pay is commensurate with the responsibilities. The benefits are comprehensive, Mr. Abernathy continued, and it is a stable, full-time position with significant opportunity for growth. I need someone I can trust implicitly someone with integrity and a genuine desire to make a positive impact. After hearing what happened at the fair, I have no doubt that person is you. Tears welled up in Sarah's eyes, blurring her vision. This wasn't just a job offer. It was vindication. It was hope. It was everything she and Amy needed. Mr. Abernathy, she managed to say, her voice thick with emotion. I, I don't know what to say. Thank you. Thank you so much. I would be honored to accept. The honor is mine, Sarah, he replied warmly. I will have my office send over the details and contract. How about we plan for you to start next Monday? We'll have a lot to discuss, but I'm confident you'll be an invaluable asset. Next Monday, Sarah repeated, a joyful smile breaking through her tears. That sounds wonderful. After hanging up the phone, Sarah stood in the hallway, the receiver still in her hand, trembling slightly. Amy came out of the kitchen, concern etched on her face. Sarah, who was that? What happened? You're crying. Sarah turned to her sister, her face radiant, tears of pure joy streaming down her cheeks. Ames, she whispered, her voice filled with wonder. That was Mr. Abernathy, the man from the fair. He's the head of the Abernathy Foundation, and he just offered me a job, a wonderful job, working right there. Amy stared at her for a moment, then her face lit up, and she squealed, launching herself into Sarah's arms. Oh my gosh, Sarah, I knew it. I knew something good would happen. You did the right thing. They clung to each other, laughing and crying, the weight of the past few days dissolving in the warmth of their shared relief and happiness. Sarah knew that life wouldn't suddenly become free of challenges, but standing there with Amy, feeling the solid ground beneath her feet, she knew they would be all right. Her act of kindness, which had cost her a chance she desperately wanted, had circled back to her in the most unexpected and beautiful way. It was a powerful, deeply felt lesson that choosing compassion, even when it seems to demand a sacrifice, can sometimes lead us to blessings far greater than we could have ever imagined, and that the truest measure of a person, and indeed an opportunity, lies not in adherence to rigid rules, but in the quiet strength of a good heart.